place an emphasis on transportation, along with investments in education, first responders, as well as other arenas. However, we have to continue to work together to add value to Botetourt County. I'd also like to thank the hardworking staff who support both groups. There certainly was a spread put out for both of us this evening. Thank you so much. During this week of Thanksgiving, I'd like to ask each of you to pay very close attention to what has gone on in Botetourt County, that presentation, what's going on in Boco. I think we all may be amazed as what was happening in the total packages in our community. And being together as a team makes it even more special. So I'm thankful for this time, for each of you, Botetourt County, and each citizen who calls Botetourt County home. Thank you both for letting me speak.
Thank you, Dr. Scott-Horn.
Thank you, Mr. Scott-Horn. Thank you for attending the November 26, 24 Joint Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors meeting. Please make sure all cell phones, communication devices, etc. are on silent mode. The full agenda package is posted on the Board of Supervisors website for review and to follow along. A QR code is included on the agenda to access the package. Before we begin, I'll introduce members and explain our procedures. On my far left is Mr. Tim Lucas, representing the Valley District. Next to me on my left is Mr. Steve Kidd, representing the Buchanan District. On my right is Mr. Sam Foster, representing the Blue Ridge District. And to his right, Dr. Elizabeth Leffel, representing the Fincastle District. I am Tim Snyder, and I represent the Amsterdam District. To expedite business, we have established the following procedures. Staff will read the agenda item and present information to the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors. I will then ask the applicant or their representative to come forward. There may be questions and comments from members. Afterwards, public comments will be taken. Anyone interested in giving public comments must complete the request to speak form and give it to staff before the meeting begins. Forms are located with the agendas and are located on the staff's table. When your name is called, please go to a microphone or to the podium. Please state your name and address before making your comments. Each person will have one opportunity to speak per public hearing item on this agenda. If you have a question, please direct it to us, and we in turn will ask the applicant. Debate between a recognized speaker and the audience is not allowed. All comments must pertain to a public hearing on the 6:00 p.m. agenda and must be directed to the Planning Commission and board members. Comments made to or from the audience are not permitted. A time limit of 3 minutes per speaker will be observed. After that, we may bring the applicant or their representative back to address any concerns. The public hearing will then be closed, and we will discuss the matter amongst ourselves and vote on that particular agenda item. The Board of Supervisors will consider the Planning Commission recommendation and will vote on their decision. The Planning Commission will meet at the Botetourt County Administration Center on Monday, December 9th, 2024 at 4 p.m. for a work session followed by a public hearing. We will now review and approve the September 9th, 2024 minutes of the Planning Commission. I would ask for a motion and a second, please.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve as written.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? We'll put that matter to vote. All in favor of approving the minutes as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mr. Chairman, I'll recuse myself from this since I was at the meeting, but I recused myself from participating.
Understood. Thank you, Mr. Foster. That motion is approved. The minutes are accepted. Mr. Matthew Lindsay will read the Blue Eagle Credit Union request, followed by a presentation.
Mr. Snyder, Supervisor Clinton, I would like to recuse myself from this particular hearing and vote as my husband is the engineer representing the applicant.
Thank you, Mrs. White.
Good evening, members of the Planning Commission, the Board of Supervisors. I'm here to give you an overview of the background report for a rezoning request from Legal Credit Union on parcel 88A1-157 in the Amsterdam District. Before we begin, I will read the legal ad for this rezoning request published in the Fincastle Herald. You'll see that on the board here. Maybe. There we go. There we go. Amsterdam District, Legal Credit Union requests a rezoning of 0.709 acres of a 1.517 acre parcel from agricultural A1 and agricultural residential AR use districts with possible proper conditions to the business B1 use district located at 3178 Roanoke Road in Daleville, identified on the tax maps as 88A1-157. To begin, we'll take a look at this parcel from a zoning perspective. This parcel is located on the corner of Roanoke Road, US 220, and Greenfield Street, totaling 1.517 acres. This property is bounded to the west by Roanoke Road, to the south by Greenfield Street, and to the east and north by a 14.191 acre property owned by 4H Investments LLC. Currently, the site is divided into 3 zoning use districts, the largest of which is B1, encompassing roughly 50% of the parcel, with AR encompassing another 40%, and then A1 covering the remaining 10. Looking at the aerial map, you will see located along the western boundary of this parcel, a roughly 2,200 square foot building that has served as office space for varying companies since 1960. This is the only structure on the property. Included with the existing structure is a driveway / parking lot that provides access to both Roanoke Road and Greenfield Street. Proposed development on this site, the purpose of this request is to allow the applicant, Legal Credit Union, the opportunity to use the full parcel for the construction of a new credit union branch and accompanying parking lot in a way that allows for the optimal development of this parcel. This will include the removal of the existing structure and gravel parking lot. Per conversations with the applicant, the site will be accessible by a 2-way entrance on Greenfield Street. The 2010 comprehensive plan and future land use map identifies this parcel as commercial. In addition, the site is served by community water and public sewer and is surrounded largely by residential and agricultural land uses. In terms of transportation, as you can see on the screen here, each of these little dots, although it may be a little bit hard to see, are a incident of some sort. So VDOT, the data for this intersection, the annual average daily traffic volume for Greenfield Street is 1,200 vehicles, and Roanoke Road is 18,000. According to the crash data, since 2016, there have been a total of 16 reported incidents with 2 resulting in visible injuries near the intersection. In the previous 9 years, there have been no fatalities or serious injuries reported at this intersection. We did reach out to VDOT to determine if there were any concerns with this type of development here and did not receive any outstanding concerns. In terms of fire rescue, this property is split basically evenly between the Fincastle Fire and Rescue Zone and the Troutville Fire and Rescue Zone, the first of which is located 5.8 miles from the site, and the latter being 3.8 miles from the site. We did not receive any comment from Fire and Rescue either. Proper conditions. So as noted in your packets and on the screen, well, sorry, that's incorrect. So these are our updated proffers here. We had some good conversations with the applicant that allowed to get more specified proffers than was originally offered. We did get this in yesterday, so I'll go ahead and read these proffers for you. The exterior of the proposed building will be in substantial conformance with the submitted photographs received by the Botetourt County Planning and Zoning Department on September the 5th. And it's hereby attached. We'll get that in a moment. Specific to the following design guidelines. So 1, stone cladding will be used from within 6 inches of finished grade up to at least the seal line of the exterior windows to wrap the main entrance, double doors, and adjacent storefront. From the entire drive-through backdrop, the remainder of the exterior building field cladding will be hardboard or fiber cement siding. Hardy plank and/or hardy shingles are typical of the proposed material and appearance. However, due to material availability, we cannot propose any specific brand name of siding material. Soffits will be perforated vinyl. Trim brands, corner trim fascia, eaves, and rakes will be fiber cement, primed and painted a natural wood or hardboard product. Color palette for exterior building materials will be tan, brown, and grays. These are photographs that were provided by the applicant to kind of give you an idea of what the exterior of the proposed credit union branch will look like. So this is a front. This is actually a existing branch in Lynchburg. So you can kind of get an idea of what they are proposing. Right. Okay. So finally, as shown on your screen and in your packet, you have a request to approve, deny, or table this rezoning. Thank you very much. We'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. The applicant is also here and they are happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lindsay. At this time, would the applicant like to speak?
Okay. My name's Corbin White. I'm with Caldwell White Associates, Engineers, Surveyors, and Planners in Roanoke, Virginia. This is Jeff Thompson with Blue Eagle Credit Union. If any questions need to be asked pertaining to operations, he would be the one to field those questions. First off, I'm not a public speaker. I have others in my family that do that for a living. We're here basically, as Matthew indicated, the parcel that we're interested in redeveloping is split zoned. And it appears that the B1 portion was originally an individual tax parcel, and the AR and A1 parcel or portion of it was a separate parcel. That really, with it now being combined into a single parcel, there's no need for split zoning. And with Blue Eagle having purchased it and doing their due diligence for redevelopment, we really have no plans right now to do anything on the AR or A1 portion of the property. However, at this time, it certainly seemed prudent to just go ahead and get this combined into B1, take the burden off the county from having to make any interpretations as to where the zoning lines are. We have talked with the highway department on this, as well as Central Water Company and the Water Authority about extending public water and sanitary sewer, which would be done at the owner's expense. The highway department, we had an issue. Initially, we showed to formalize I don't mean this in a bad way, but right now the entrance on 220 is fairly roughshod. It's pretty much just gravel all the way along the frontage with no defined curb. We were going to define a 50-foot wide entrance and then have an access point from Greenfield Street as well. And we talked with Catherine Bowman and Ashley at the Salem residency. And the issue became the separation distance between Greenfield Roanoke Road interchange and our new entrance. We would have to ask for an exception, even if we put it at the far north end of the property. And there's guardrail, there's grade issues there. We talked with Blue Eagle, and really, they don't want a Roanoke Road entrance. They would rather come in off of the secondary road. Therefore, that's what we propose. We will have to shift the entrance slightly to the east because there's a 225-foot separation distance between the eastern edge of the northbound travel lane and the point of curvature of our new entrance. And so right now, I think it's 110 or something to that effect. So we will be shifting it. Aside from that, Matthew very clearly outlined pretty much the basis of our request. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to try and answer them to the best of my ability.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thompson. Any comments? None necessary, but if you are so inclined.
We're excited to be in Botetourt. We have 900 members. We already serve the residents of Botetourt who in excess of $14 million in loans loaned out to the residents, $12.5 million in deposits. We've got a good basis for a branch here already. We're just excited for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, I'll open the public hearing for the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors. I do not have any request to speak forms on this matter. Is there anybody out there that I'm missing? Well, with no request to speak forms and no one interested, I will now close the public hearing. This time, the members of the board may discuss this amongst ourselves.
I don't have any issue with it other than I think the traffic study coming off of Greenfield is current and there are going to be additional houses built on that road. So I don't know whether traffic would be a concern or not.
I like seeing the parcel zoned with one zoning and not three. I'm also have some concerns about the traffic there. That's always been a spot that's been difficult to get and out of, and a lot of the residents back in there. But that, has been a business before, so I don't see a huge change.
Yeah.
Any other comments, questions?
Would like to thank staff and Mr. White for a thorough package that's helped cut down on the questions tonight. So,
But nothing else, thank you.
Okay, well, at this time, I'm going to make a motion. I move that the business B1 rezoning request for the property of Blue Eagle Credit Union be forwarded to the Board of Supervisors with a recommendation of approval with the attached proffers. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
There is a motion and a second. Are there any further discussion points? All in favor of this motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries.
So that recommendation for approval goes forward to the Board of Supervisors. We heard the discussion, saw the documents and the exhibits. So we're at the same place the Planning Commission was in terms of adjudicating this issue. But let me do as Mr. Snyder did for his group, just so we're all on the same page. I'll introduce the 4 members of the board who will participate in this vote, and then the 5th member I'll explain in just a moment. On my far left or far right is Blue Ridge District Supervisor, Mr. Michael. Next to him is Brandon Nicely, representing the Fincastle District. My far right, your far left, Dr. Max Scotthorn, representing the Valley District. I represent the Amsterdam District, and Ms. Amy White, who represents Buchanan District, as you know, recused herself because of a relationship with the engineer. So the 4 of us have the matter before us. Is there, and I think it's pretty clear in the presentation. I'll open the floor for comments from Board of Supervisors members. Anything?
Nope. Things are pretty clear.
It's my district. looks pretty clear cut to me. It's a parcel of land that's begging to be developed and has had opportunities in the past that never came through. So to me, it's a good thing for the county, good thing for the community and for our economy. So I will move for approval by the Board of Supervisors.
I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor of that motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries and Blue Eagle will go forward with their zoning.
At this time, Mr. Nick Baker will read the Hodges Special Exemption Permit Request, followed by a presentation.
Well, good evening, Mr. Chair Snyder, members of the Planning Commission. Good evening, Chair Clinton, members of the Board of Supervisors. Thank you, as always, for the opportunity to present this evening. This request is out of the Fincastle District. Wesley A. Hodges requests a special exception permit for a bed and breakfast with possible conditions in their Agriculture A1 use district. This property is located at 191 Bridge Street, Eagle Rock, identified on the tax maps is 4A46. So to begin the presentation, I would just like to provide a little summary and context of this request. The subject parcel here is home to Wesley Hodges Fly Fishing. The purpose of that business is to conduct off-site hunting and fishing tours in the area. Fishing and hunting operations do not occur on site, but what does occur on site is the housing of customers who choose to stay overnight at this property when they're not off-site hunting and fishing. As it currently stands, we have just one home on the property that is here where my cursor is. And that currently has approval from the county to operate as a short-term rental. In addition to that, which is where we kind of is the cause of why we're here tonight, Mr. Hodges, who is the applicant, did place several yurts in this area of the property, which it happens to border the James River, and staff noticed this on a site visit to another property, noticed this in the act of other business, investigated it, and we did determine that this was located in the FEMA regulatory floodway. So having said that, that is a violation of the ordinance. A notice of violation was sent to the property owner. And as part of the process to get the notice of violation resolved, he is applying for the special exception permit tonight to construct another dwelling on the property to go up here, which is out of the floodway, and will remove the yurts that are in violation. So kind of the main point that I would like to drive home is that the use of the property for Wesley Hodges Fly Fishing has nothing to do with the violation. That's in compliance. Everything is good there. It was the placement of structures in the property that resulted in the violation that we're working through now. So having said that, I'll provide some more context and information now. The zoning of the property itself is located in Glen Wilton. It is primarily agriculture use types and zoning, with A1 on 3 adjacent parts of the property, and then residential use and zoning on the east side here in the orange. So this slide here shows that the property, as I previously mentioned, is entirely in certain FEMA special hazard areas. The area in the gray, this is the FEMA regulatory floodway. And in this area, FEMA says that you cannot have any permanent development of any kind. So yurts were included as part of that permanent development, which is again, the violation in question. And this blue area here, this is FEMA Zone AE floodplain. So FEMA says that you can permanently develop here. You just have to basically elevate it to a certain extent and meet, a couple other requirements. And again, so the overall kind of goal here is to remove these yurts and build a bed and breakfast short-term rental to offset the loss of removing things out of the floodway. We're not, or the applicant's not seeking to expand business operations or expand the occupation of the property. It's basically a like-for-like replacement. Here's just an aerial view of the property itself. Again, showing the one current existing dwelling that will remain. No change in use there. The property itself is screened by tree canopy coverage on 3 parts of it. On the east portion, we also have railroad, or sorry, on the west portion, we also have the railroad. On the east, we have the James River. On the north, the property is accessed by Bridge Street, which is a state-maintained road maintained by VDOT, and accessed by one private gravel driveway. The applicant has hired a professional engineer to help him build this proposed bed and breakfast if it is approved tonight. The applicant's engineer submitted this concept site plan that you see attached here. Where my cursor is, this is the proposed location of the bed and breakfast. The structure itself will be 2 stories and consist of 4 rooms, all to be rented out. It will utilize the existing driveway, and a new gravel parking lot will be put in to accommodate the customers utilizing the business. The first story of the proposed structure will be used for storage only, will not be used for residential purposes. If the request is approved this evening, staff will work directly with the applicant as well as the engineer to ensure compliance with all zoning, building, and FEMA requirements. Fortunately, this is pretty straightforward. It's something that we see at our level very frequently. Staff are suggesting a few conditions for your consideration. The first is the number of bedrooms for the bed and breakfast shall be limited to 4, as indicated on the application. Noise generated by development shall not violate provisions of the noise ordinance. And then this last just specifies that all provisions shall be met as required by the Botetourt County zoning ordinance. In no instance shall the zoning conditions exempt a project from any state, local, or federal development requirement, except where allowed by the zoning ordinance. And what this basically just means that we're not giving him permission to violate any local, state, or federal laws. And where this is really applicable is that this will ensure that Mr. Hodges will remove the items from the floodway as agreed upon. I will mention that we did not receive any comments or concerns from the public leading up to tonight. That is all I have. The applicants are in attendance. They do not have a formal presentation, but we are happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Does the applicant wish to speak?
My name is Corey Divany. I'm a local lawyer, and I'm also, as of 2012, a resident of Botetourt County. I'm going to introduce my client, Wesley Hodges, a little more extensively in a minute here. And this is his daughter, Carson. So Carson's a little nervous, but she may have some questions for her too. I moved here to Botetourt County in 2012. I came here to practice law in 2006, and we lived in Southwest County for the first 6 years. And it became clear to us within a first year or so of moving here that we had moved to the wrong place, and that the best quality of life in the broader Roanoke Valley, and really, I think, throughout Southwest Virginia, is in Botetourt County. And we didn't really anticipate the development that we have seen in the last 12 years when we were looking at buying a house over on Shavers Farm Road. It was still a pretty quiet place. And there weren't a lot of stoplights between us and I-81, and all that's changing now, and we have appreciated some of those changes. But what brought us out here was the beautiful rural quality of the land in Botetourt County, the recreational opportunities. I've got a big family, and we have spent so many summer days and fall Saturdays and winter breaks hiking the Appalachian Trail, canoeing on the James River, deer hunting, and experiencing all of those wonderful privileges of living here that many of you may have grown up with, but folks like me that came from Florida didn't have in the same abundance. And so we have loved that quality of public lands and access to recreational opportunities. My client's business seeks to provide those opportunities not only for folks who have thus far come from 34 states to fish and hunt with him, and several foreign countries. He spent the day upland bird hunting with 4 businessmen from France today. But he also seeks to share those opportunities with residents of Botetourt County. And in fact, he is my client today, but I was his client first. I spent the day with him fly fishing on the James River summer ago. And that's how we came to become acquainted. And I think I can't be the only Botetourt County resident who has been introduced to fly fishing or upland bird hunting by Wesley Hodges' fly fishing and upland bird hunting business. So that's my pitch, just as a resident of this county, of why I think we need to make sure that his business continues to be viable and have the ability to expand, to continue to bring people here, and to allow residents of Botetourt County to continue to invest in the preservation of those recreational opportunities. Now, I'd like to briefly introduce you to Mr. Hodges, and then let him answer any questions you may have. He's originally from East Texas, and Mr. Hodges, when he graduated from high school, joined the Army and did 6 tours in Iraq with the 82nd Airborne, doing reconnaissance and sniper work there. After he finished those tours, he went to Virginia Tech on the GI Bill, and that's what brought him to this area. And when he finished school, he decided to do what he'd always loved best, which is fishing and hunting. And he's tried to make a business out of a boyhood passion and obsession, which continues to this day. And so he lives on site. We're calling it a bread and breakfast. This will be like a barn-like structure where equipment will be stored on the first floor, and there will be 4 rooms in the upstairs. Part of the reason for this is exactly as it's been described, which is that they've been called yurts. We call them cavalry tents. He put them on platforms along the river, found out that he wasn't in compliance, and had already made commitments through the end of October to the house folks there, and then committed to take those down at the end of the season. There haven't been anybody in those tents for the last month, and he's going to remove those in the coming weeks as things start to slow down a little bit. The other part of the the reason that he needs to build this structure is that he's seeking a special status as a Orvis guide, certified guide. And in order for that lodge to have enjoy that status, they've got to be able to house at least 12 people on site. The closest similar business that is Orvis certified is the Primlin Resort over in Patrick County, which, if any of you have visited, is an extraordinarily prestigious and beautiful place that brings a lot of business to Patrick County. He's not doing anything on that scale, but it is the same level of quality. And so these are the reasons that we're seeking this special exception permit. Really appreciate the folks at the county who have been very helpful to us in every way in putting this together. And so thank you for that. And with that, I'm going to turn the time over to Mr. Hodges and Carson as well, if he wants to say.
Thank you. Thank you guys for seeing me again. We came in and talked, God, must have been the end of last season as well. Because, you know, based off my Texas bullheadedness, I own the land, you do what you want. That's just how we do things in Texas. However, that, you know, in working with the county and Corey, that's not how things work, especially within a floodway. Okay. So what we're looking to do is we're being creative. There is no other location that the business needs to be at. It is a highly sought after business. 36, 34 states we service. People from foreign countries come here to fish and hunt with us in Botetourt County, and they want this location. We have roughly a 70% return rate on clients. They come back year after year after year. And this, as Corey said, this is in the running for the prestigious Orvis Lodge. We are already Orvis certified in guiding for birds and fish. The next category up to get to that supreme level is the Orvis endorsed lodge. You must maintain a capacity level of 12 people. So they were already looking at approving that status up until last year when I was in notice of the violation. Then I had to pull my packet out so that it didn't look too sketchy to the Orvis team. This barn here, like he said, is being engineered. It's already above the flood elevation, the first livable conditions. Those have to be 6.5 foot. The first floor to sleep on, which would be the second floor, is already at 10 foot based off the design drawings we have. So that would put us above the flood elevation by about 3.5 foot. The structure itself, again, is not to do anything, you know, no fire, no nothing. It is simply to bring that capacity number up to 12 people with really high quality lodging accommodations to match the aesthetic and the, I guess you call it the look of the Glen Wilton, you know, Virginia farmhouse barns. It'll be all wood siding, all wood siding. It'll be white to match the house. It'll have brown trim to match the fences on the property itself. I don't want to start rambling too much about it, but I do love Botetourt County. I love working here. I love my guide team. We have quite possibly one of the most reputable guiding operations on the East Coast right now. I cannot hire enough guides to service the amount of people that are trying to come to this area just to fish and hunt with us. We have an operation unlike anything else in the state. Like I said, we are not Primland. We are a truly dedicated hunting and fishing lodge. We are not a resort. No Frisbee golf on site. They're there to fish and hunt and go on wild pursuits in Botetourt County. We are permitted through the National Forest, federal government. We have all of our state permits to do this kind of commercial guiding operations. We are fully vetted across multiple different avenues, CPR first aid, wilderness first aid, swiftwater rescue. It is a highly professional operation ran by a highly professional person. And with your guys' approval, we'll continue our success. So thank you.
Is there any questions we can answer?
Not at this time. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
So an interesting situation. We had two speakers signed up to speak during the open session. Nevertheless, I will now open the public hearing. The two request to speak forms were by Mr. Denny and Mr. Hodges. Am I missing any request to speak forms? At this time, I'll close the public hearing, and Planning Commission members will be able to discuss this matter amongst ourselves.
I'd like to start by commending Mr. Hodges for overcoming his bullheadedness. But like in all seriousness, I think it is important to recognize that he appears to have expended a lot of time and resources to work with staff to come up to a compromising solution to get him out of this violation and still be able to conduct his business as he planned and meet his goals. And I think that's really important. And I appreciate both sides of that. And thank you, Neil, for the very nice presentation and explaining what was originally sort of a complicated matter, I think, but I don't have any further questions.
I have no questions on it.
Being chair of the BZA, I appreciate his willingness. We heard this case before. I appreciate his willingness to work with staff and come to some mutual understanding of what he needed to do and get it done. And I hope great success for his business.
I don't have anything else to add. I think it's a good project and wish him luck on it.
I'd like to take a moment and thank Mr. Hodges for his service. I'd also like to thank Mr. Hodges for coming in this evening with a professional presentation and earnest approach. That is appreciated. There are no other questions or comments. I'd like to take a motion.
I move the special exception permit for a bed and breakfast on the property of Wesley A. Hodges be forwarded to the Board of Supervisors with the recommendation of approval with the conditions outlined by staff in the background report. The recommendation is made on the basis the requirements of section 25-583 of the zoning ordinance have been satisfied.
There is a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. I'd like to put the matter to vote if there's no further discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Board of Supervisors will pick it up from that point. We've heard the arguments and the justifications, so I don't think there's any need to expand upon that. So I'll just go forward and ask, is there a member on the Board of Supervisors who wishes to make a motion for or against the special exception permit?
Mr. Chairman, I'll move that special exception permit for the bed and breakfast on the property of Wesley Hodges be forwarded. I'm reading the wrong one. Anyway, I'll vote for, I'd make a motion to approve.
I'll second that. Thank you, sir.
It's easy to read this.
So you've heard Brandon's motion. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, if I might clarify, Mr. Nicely, you meant approve as recommended by the Planning Commission, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Oh, well, not all, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Yeah, I second. Doc second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? That's unanimous in favor. Thank you, folks.
Thank you. At this time, Mrs. Nicole Pendleton will read the Economic Development Authority's rezoning to research and advanced manufacturing request, followed by a presentation.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, and members of the board. The request before you tonight is on behalf of the Economic Development Authority of Botetourt County, requesting a rezoning from the agricultural A1 use district to the research and advanced manufacturing RAM use district with possible proffered conditions for a 62.767 acre portion of a 312.55 acre tract located at the terminus of International Parkway in Daleville, identified on the tax maps as a portion of 88 parentheses 26-3. A little bit of history about the Botetourt Center at Greenfield. It was purchased in Botetourt County in the early 1990s and transferred to the EDA in 2020. And a master plan shown on the website shows 5 current industrial facilities, administrative offices, and educational and training facilities here in the park. In June of 2014, the majority of the property located within the center was rezoned from the planned office park use district and the industrial use district to the research and advanced manufacturing use district. It was created at that time to allow for greater flexibility to incorporate office, research, and manufacturing uses that are complementary to each other. The RAM use district was created to accommodate all phases of manufacturing from research to final distribution. No other districts contain such a wide scope of uses. On this particular piece of property, there's a 200-foot good neighbor buffer extending along the northern boundary of the lot today and proposed potentially in the future, subject to the rezoning request. This buffer has not been formalized. However, it is the EDA's demonstration, according to the applicant, to cooperate with the property owners immediately north of Lot 3. The purpose of this request is to consolidate the multiple zoning districts into one. Let's get back to the zoning map. There you go. By adding the acreage that was recently combined to the parcel. So the brown that you see on the map is the existing RAM, and the portion in the red is the property that was recently combined into this parcel. This property is currently only accessible via International Parkway and not from any roadways exterior to the park. The 63 acres of property in this request represents 20% of the overall parcel. As this is a speculative request, no use or concept is identified at this time. Any future development of the property would require conformance with the county's comprehensive plan, compliance with zoning, stormwater erosion and sediment control, and building code. Development site plans would be required to ensure conformance with codes prior to the issuance of any land disturbance or building construction. Properties within the park are also subject to private covenants and restrictions, which are recorded as in 2017. The Botetourt County Board of Supervisors, as well as a majority of the park owners would need to support, and the board would need to ratify any covenant changes prior to any amendments. Those covenants address materials, equipment screening, outdoor storage, grading detail, lighting, and landscaping, as well as conservation easements discussed earlier. Property adjacent to the park and adjacent to this parcel include residential, agricultural, forested use, research and advanced manufacturing uses that currently are vacant, as well as munters, as well as agricultural zoning to the west with additional residential and forested land. The Research and Advanced Manufacturing District regulates permitted uses and building requirements in this district. In terms of traffic, the latest available data from VDOT is from 2019. International Parkway data indicates an annual average daily traffic volume of 4,440 vehicles. International Parkway is located off Roanoke Road and dead ends at the terminus of the property where you can see this little area here. Property is located in the Fincastle Fire and Rescue Zone, located 5.9 miles from the Fincastle Volunteer Fire Department, and is served currently by Western Virginia Water Authority. We've received 2 comments to date. They've been shared with the Planning Commission and the board. Ms. Marlene Preston, an adjacent property owner, has asked that the county consider protections such as additional buffering, landscaping requirements, and assurances about impact on noise and the quality of air and water. Mr. Channing Preston spoke in opposition, also requesting an additional buffer and adjustments to the RAM definition that are related to noise. Before I conclude the presentation, I just want to take a minute to summarize that this is a rezoning request that entails amending approximately 20% area of a property to ensure that that property is no longer split zone. So that would encompass the RAM zoning if the Planning Commission recommended and the board were to approve that. There were no proffered conditions that were submitted by the applicant, which is the Economic Development Authority. So the only proffered conditions that could not be imposed, they would be required to be submitted by the applicant. And the applicant has noted that they're happy to answer any questions, or I'm happy to also entertain any questions or take any that you all would have for me at this time. So that will conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Pendleton. Is there an applicant that would wish to speak in addition to you, or?
Not at this time.
Not this time. Thank you. Then at this time, I would like to open the public hearing. I do have several requests to speak forms in no particular order. First, Mr. Danny Goad.
Good evening, Chairman of the Planning Commission and Chairman of the Board of Supervisors. I thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name's Danny Goad. I live in the Valley District. When I was trying to understand this issue, I went back to the Planning Commission's website to be able to see the information that they had on it. And I didn't find any information there. And then after the packet came out for the Board of Supervisors, I was able to find that at the end of the packet. So my comments directed to the Board of Supervisors would be that while it's good for you to be able to have a joint meeting with the Planning Commission, it appears that in these particular cases, for items C and D in particular, it truncates the normal process of review. Normally, you have the Planning Commission meeting, some period of time passes, for additional information, for people to learn of what's going on, and by the board, if the Board of Supervisors were to vote on this tonight, they would not allow the normal process of review by the citizens of Botetourt County. And when I look at the information that was provided, and you've got it in your packet, when you look at the application of the two prior items, one was submitted on 9/5/24. The other one was submitted on 9/3/24. Then you go over to look at the application for items, or item C, was submitted on 11/7. When I look at the application for those submitted in September, all of them are nicely typed. I look at the application that was submitted on 11/7. It seems as though it was hurriedly thrown together. It looks like maybe a second grader used a crayon, not to complain about anyone's writing, but it doesn't appear that this has had the same level of scrutiny nor the same amount of time for people to understand what's going on. And to go further to say, you know, both of the items A and B had 17 to 20 pages, and you got a little 6-page description, which I still haven't made heads or tails of.
Mr.
And then
Kidd,
you
I'd
got
ask
the
you to
county
wrap your
policy.
comments up,
Or-
please.
Okay. But you've got the, you know, the county ordinance is going to be changed. And I think the Board of Supervisors should give sufficient time for the complete review as normal. Thank you.
Next, we have Robert Arrett Jr.
Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. Good evening, members of the Board of Supervisors. My name is Robert Arrett Jr. My son and I own property there at 111 Stoneleigh Drive, Troutville. It borders the Greenfield property. I am mainly here with just questions. I will stop for a second and say that I do agree with Mr. Gode's comments regarding review. I do agree with them. Just a few questions I'd like to be clear on. The 60 plus or minus acres we're talking about this evening, is that just where it says RAM? There, the bigger, broader orange highlighted area is the whole greenfield space that is remaining undeveloped, I guess. Is not, that big orange area is not part of tonight's discussion. That's one question. I do have concerns expressed by Mr. Preston and Ms. Preston, maybe at previous meetings regarding noise and air pollution. I do wonder, I guess I heard this evening, make sure I'm clear on this, that there is not a new neighbor known at this time. It's just a rezoning request for possible things in the future, future development. And last question would be, well, this, if it is the black highlighted area here, it really is not exactly bordering our property. Our property is up there at 87.8 1E and 87.83. We've got 24 acres there and a significant investment in that property. Buffers, I don't know if the commission could talk to us about buffers when they do develop this property, if it's going to be, 100 foot, 200 foot landscaping, anything done in that regard as well. Appreciate you entertaining my questions. Appreciate your time this evening. Thank you.
Carrie Martell.
Hello, I'm Carrie Martell. I live in the Buchanan District. Thank you for the chance to talk to you about this. I mostly just have some questions and concerns. So the agenda packet mentions a 200-foot good neighbor buffer, and it says it's not formalized. So I'm curious where exactly that's going to be and what is that going to be accounted for and formalized in some way. It's going to be a big change for the neighbors. It says that there are no conditions proffered, which sounds a lot like carte blanche being offered to whoever may come upon this later on. That makes me very uncomfortable, and I don't even have property adjoining that. The VDOT traffic information is from 2019, as the presenter pointed out. I think given the Wawa, the Fieldstone apartments, the other apartments in the Daleville and the town center, and the traffic pattern changes, this just seems like an unreliable set of information to be using. So I think this is really not a proposal that should be voted on tonight. I think the public deserves more information and more specific detail. Thanks.
Sherman Fouts.
Hi, Chairman Faust, Amsterdam District. Thank you for letting me speak. This property affects me more than it does anyone. The whole new, what you're trying to do, that comes all the way across me, every bit of it, every respect. My house is right in the middle, and you got it right up against me. What I know, time's going to change, and I understand that. I understand completely. I'm a builder. But what I'm asking, can we give 200-foot buffer in where the site of the house is at, just to protect my property value? If not, it's gonna hurt my property value terrible because you come right against my house. And the rest of it, I don't care, just with the site of the house. I didn't find anybody to consider that or not. I think it's somewhat 2,000 feet across there or something. Y'all bought the property right against my house, and then it goes all the way back. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Mr. Fouts. Mrs. Pendleton, would you like to respond as this presenter for this application?
Thank you. And I will, if anybody would like to jump in, I'd be happy to but I'm going to give it a whirl. So in terms of the process and procedure, the state code does allow the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors to hold joint public hearings. And as always, there is a due process for notification, and those ads were placed within the proper channels for advertising within the time frame that is allowed, required by the state code, and all adjacent property owners were notified accordingly. Just checking through here. So responding to Mr. Errett's question, I believe he owns the properties. I think he said 1D or E.
E and 3.
E and 3. E and 3. Okay, so the portion of the property being requested for rezoning tonight is this property that was recently combined with this master tract of the 300 acres. So the only portion of the property under request tonight is going to be this particular area. That's the 62 acres. This property here is already zoned in the Research and Advanced Manufacturing District. Now, our office is responsible for enforcing zoning regulations and building regulations and stormwater and all of that. We do not get into the business of enforcing private covenants and restrictions. However, we are frequently asked to comment on those in our partnership and collaboration with the Economic Development Office and any other questions that we may have come up. And so I can provide you with information that there is already an existing good neighbor buffer along this property. And as I have mentioned, there is no ability for the Planning Commission to recommend, nor for the Board of Supervisors to impose conditions with a rezoning request. The potential for future amendments to covenants and restrictions or future conversations in a later date when development occurs, I could say, based on conversations generally consistent with continuing those, and have had, again, had conversations with economic development about the intent to continue to maintain the character and integrity of the park as it stands today, which does include those conservation easements.
Mrs. Pendleton?
Yes, sir.
If I might just point out, the very next item on our agenda is actually the EDA's request to relocate those conservation buffers all the way around to be 1 to 200 feet. So I know that hasn't been fully fleshed out to be a formally written deed, but the EDA is requesting for that to be done.
Thank you, Mr. Lockaby. Are there any other questions or concerns that you all heard from the public that I did not answer at this moment in time? I would say that the request to what we call for lack of a more formalized term, straight up rezoning, has been consistent with some that have been granted in the past in terms of industrial or those types of uses. Again, specifically when covenants and restrictions are private ways of controlling development, regulating development. Within those, there are those types of opportunities there. So.
Thank you, Mrs. Pendleton. At this time, I will close the public hearing and I'll ask the members of the board if they have any questions.
I have two questions. And the first, Mrs. Pendleton might need to. I still have some confusion. I too is concerned about the way the 200-acre good neighbor buffer exists, but it's not quote unquote formalized. I just wonder if you could expand a little bit more. What does it mean that it's not formalized? Does it mean that if somebody doesn't want to respect the 200-foot buffer, they really don't have to? Because this, I think, means it would be by right usage, so it may not have to come before us again. Is that true?
So any of the uses that are permitted by right in the RAM district would be allowed to be developed. Again, in terms of the existing covenants and restrictions and what is the orange that or it's brown, there are existing conservations in place as well as covenants that impose additional requirements and restrictions. However, it has not formally been extended to the area that is in green at this time.
Okay. And that's something that we could or could not recommend for tonight.
It could not be formalized as part of a resolution. It couldn't be binding for zoning because it would have proffers have to be submitted by the applicant to be considered by the Planning Commission and the board.
Ms. Leffel, if I can maybe clarify, we're at the risk of confusing covenants and easements versus zoning. From the zoning perspective, those are not required. However, there are covenants on this park which require minimum 100-foot buffers all the way around. The next item on the agenda is an authorization from the Board of Supervisors in order to formally, the Board of Supervisors needs to give the EDA permission in order to formally relocate the buffer, which currently goes right down the middle of the parcel because that's where it was previously platted, to go all the way around the new outer edge of the property in order to provide 100 to 200 foot around that. The next step, if the board approves that, would be to have a formal plat drawn and an actual deed of easement, which would come back to the board for final action.
Okay, thank you. My second question might have the same answer. But since I'm like the newest person on the Planning Commission and not around when the brown part, the original RAM zoning was put into place, I am nervous about development being allowed to take place without environmental impact studies. So is that something that, at what point could that be imposed or requested if the green part were rezoned into brown?
So I can only speak from, again, relationships and communications with economic development. I know that as Lot 3 has been explored for development, there have been lots of conversations and considerations around what all that entails. And if Mr. McFadden would like to jump in or chime in on what that looks like, he certainly knows much more about that than I do.
Good evening, members of the Planning Commission, Board of Supervisors, ladies and gentlemen in the audience. My name is Ken McFadden. I'm Director of Economic Development for Botetourt County. I'm also the Executive Director of the Economic Development Authority, which is the applicant to the question of environmental impact studies and so forth. We have a full cadre of environmental site assessments, cultural resources analysis and studies, wetland delineation, threatened and endangered species studies. Those reports are always ongoing and being updated. We're doing that now for the subject property, for the subject 62 acres, with an environmental site assessment, cultural resources, wetlands delineation. We follow all federal and state regulatory guidelines when it comes to environmental impact.
And that would, that would apply to anything that happens in the 300 acre or 300-ish, right? So, but that's something that the county does proactively and ongoing. It may not be specific for a certain business that wants to come in necessarily, right?
Businesses, every business prospect is different, but they typically do ask for those studies. And they will typically either do their own or ask for our copies to assess them. And if they wish to update them, they do.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Snyder.
Thank you. At this time, Planning Commission will discuss the request amongst ourselves.
As I understand it, we need to rezone that to be able to include it in the economic development aspects of it. It gives us more potential opportunities. I mean, we've had that land for quite some time and, you know, some developments have occurred, but not all of it has. So the fact that the county has to do plenty of studies and, you know, we would want buffering around it. I think anybody that would come in and try and request something, that is something that we would be making sure that we consider that with any neighboring, it's buzzing, neighboring land that goes in there. But I mean, I think it needs to be rezoned to offer up the ability to then put it in so that the buffers can go around the whole thing.
There's no other discussion. I'll take a motion.
Sure.
I'll make a motion. I move that the Research and Advanced Manufacturing RAM rezoning request for the property of Botetourt County Economic Development Authority be forwarded to the Board of Supervisors with a recommendation of approval. This recommendation is made on the basis that the requirements of Article 5, Division 6 of the zoning ordinance have been satisfied and that the proposal would serve the public necessity, convenience, general welfare, and is good zoning practice. There is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? This time I'd like to take a vote. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you very much.
Following customary procedure, the Board of Supervisors will pick it up from there. The Planning Commission has moved for approval of the RAM rezoning. So what's our pleasure, ladies and gentlemen? You've heard the arguments. Are you ready for a vote? I'll move for approval of the RAM redistricting.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded, but any discussion on this? Any discussion? RAM rezoning. There's no further discussion. I'll entertain a motion. It has been moved. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? RAM rezoning is approved. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, Mr. John McCoy will read the text amendment request, followed by a presentation.
Well, good evening, Mr. Chairs, members of the Planning Commission and the board. I want to apologize to you from the outset and say that you've got the worst for last, so I apologize for that. But we'll try to get through it a little quick for you. So before you tonight is a proposed text amendment to the zoning ordinance. As the legal advertisement states, the Botetourt County Board of Supervisors request a text amendment to amend the Botetourt County zoning ordinance to incorporate the uses greenways and trails and data center and its definition to the Research and Advanced Manufacturing RAM use district. This amendment includes a few actions to move but not change the definition of greenways and trails, adding it to the definitions section of the zoning ordinance. This is a simple housekeeping task as the definition currently rests in the gateway crossing overlay section, so it makes sense to actually move it to the real definitions section of the zoning ordinance. Additionally, the text amendment proposes adding greenways and trails as a by right use to the Research and Advanced Manufacturing or RAM district. Given that we already have a variety of walking trails throughout this park, this lends legitimacy to those developments and offers a path, which is a pun, I appreciate that nobody laughed at it, for future expansion or improvement. Next, the text amendment proposes a definition for the use data center and adds those as a permitted by right use in the RAM district. The proposed definition is as follows. Please bear with me as I read through it. A facility used primarily for the storage, management, processing, and transmission of digital data, which houses computer and or network equipment, systems, servers, appliances, and other associated components related to digital data operations. Such facility may also include air handlers, power generators, water cooling and storage facilities, utility substations, and other associated utility infrastructure to support sustained operations at a data center. Finally, the text amendment proposes adding this use as a by right use in the RAM district. Adding the data center use brings the RAM district into the 21st century of data technology, keeping it on the cutting edge of development potential. As you may know, Virginia is the world's leader in data storage technology, and the RAM district is a well-suited location for this type of use. Staff went to the tip top of the data center storage world when reviewing ordinances to propose for you all tonight, which includes Prince William and Loudoun counties in Northern Virginia. I know Northern Virginia is always a sore subject down here in the south of the state. They are having an onslaught of data storage centers. They have a lot of property, a lot of area in the county zoned for data storage. This is a very narrowed piece of property in the county and would only be permitted by right in the RAM district. It's so few that you're actually sitting in the only district in the county that's zoned for RAM. While data centers can be taxing on utility needs, such as water and electric, any operator of such a facility will need to coordinate extensively with utility providers to meet those needs. There are also no impacts to the road network past construction, as these types of uses generate much less road traffic from employees or shipping compared to traditional manufacturing. Last, I will say that this text amendment does not prohibit future amendments to the zoning text if needed in the future. Right now, this text amendment only permits data storage in that small area of the county. If a need should arise to restrict or prohibit or maybe even to expand this use, the board may authorize another text amendment to do so. That's all I have for you right now tonight. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. The requested action is here before you, Planning Commission, and after your recommendation, the board will act. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy. At this time, I will open up the public hearing. I have one request to speak form. Mr. Danny Goode.
There we go. The comments that I have for this particular item are similar to the comments I made earlier regarding the other item. I think we need to have a period of time between the action of the Planning Commission, a period of time between that and the Board of Supervisors action. Thank you.
That is the only request to speak form that I have. This time I will close the public hearing. Do members of the board have any questions for the applicant?
I have a question. What was the impetus for changing for the greenways and trails, for changing what section what was the impetus for making that move?
It's in the wrong section, to be honest with
Okay.
you.
Just
It
sort of
came
clean it up.
in, Yeah, we didn't have it defined. We added it when we updated and actually added the gateway crossing overlay to the ordinance. I won't say that sometimes text ordinances piggyback some uses on there, but if we know it's a need to include in the ordinance, sometimes we'll also add that to it. And it was something that, you know, we're part of the Greenway Commission. We have trails. And it's an important recreational aspect of the community. We just didn't have it defined. And just to make it, you know, actually bona fide and in the ordinance, we put it in the gateway crossing overlay. And now this is an opportunity to move it to the RAM district.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Are there any other questions for the applicant? This time, the Planning Commission will discuss this request amongst ourselves.
I'm fine with it. I think there's definitely a need to have the type of definition in a location. It is certainly potentials in the future, so I'm okay with it.
I have a comment about maybe the definition or description of RAM. And maybe this is codified in ordinance somewhere, I don't know, but our packet says that the facilities typically located generate little outside noise, odor, dust, et cetera. They're constructed and maintained with environmental sensitivity. I guess this comes back to my concern about new industry coming in and whether they have to do environmental impacts specific to their industry, to their manufacturing process. So I don't know how do we define little outside effect? I don't know if somebody can answer that question or.
I can take my best shot at it. So every zoning district has kind of the purpose statement at the beginning of the zoning district. I believe that's taken straight from that, and it helps to define the RAM district as separate from our other industrial zoning districts, which have a little bit more outsized impact to the localities around there. This park here was designed for facilities that have a little bit more of the higher tech, less impact as far as kind of smoke pollution, noise pollution, water pollution potentially, that other uses might entail. So that's kind of where that language came from, and is an intent to encourage that type of use to find themselves here in the park.
Okay.
And I was not here when that was written, so that is my best guess for you.
Thank you. I wasn't here either. So. Thank you.
Any other comments? Then at this time, I'd like to take a motion.
I move that the proposed text amendment as stated in staff memo be forwarded to the Board of Supervisors with recommendation of approval. The recommendation is made on the basis that the requirements of section 25-581.1 of the zoning ordinance have been satisfied, and the proposal will serve the public necessity, convenience, general welfare, and good zoning practice.
There is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion
Excuse me.
and a second. Is there any further discussion? We'll take a vote on the matter. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you to the Planning Commission. That puts it in our court to evaluate that recommendation. The recommendation from the Planning Commission is that trails, greenways, I should say, and data centers be added to the uses in the RAM district. That's the matter that lies before us. The Planning Commission recommends approval of that text change. Do I hear any discussion from the Board of Supervisors? Any opinions from the Board of Supervisors?
So moved.
So moved.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded that we perform a text amendment to allow greenways and data centers in the RAM district. Is there any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
At this time, I'd like to move on to other business and learn about what's going on in Boco. Mr. McCoy.
All right, no rest for me, right? Right back to it. So what's going on in Boco? We presented to you all about this a few months ago. We just wanted to give you a generalized update of how it's been going so far. So if it's new to you or just as a refresher, the What's Going On in Boco tool is something that we've been working on with our folks in communications. It is a tool to provide the citizens and residents of Botetourt County an opportunity to better understand the development that is going on in their community. So, Mr. Snyder, as you drive down the road, you see some development going on. You see dirt moved or a building going up. You'll be able to go to that site, take a look at the development there, and get a better understanding of what it is, who it is, and where it is in construction. This is something that staff puts together. So it's generally speaking something that has either been approved in a public hearing, or that is something that has already received their plat approval or their final building permit approval. So it's something that, generally speaking, is a done deal. We're hesitant to put something on there that might not come to fruition. So it's kind of a loose but not specific definition for what makes it on there. We launched this, Tiffany, I think in August. And since August, we have had 5,000 views of the tool itself. So some of that might be staff, but 5,000 is the number that is reported on our ArcGIS website. And as Tiffany's showing you here on the screen, all those orange flags on the map indicate some sort of development that's occurring in Botetourt County. And if you want to just click on one of those, maybe the Hampton Inn Hotel. If you click on that, it will expand and tell you a little brief description of what it is, the status, and then the approval of the project. Now that's either approved in-house, so all of the permitting needs are approved administratively, or it was approved by a public hearing. We've also included some images of some of the renderings as we have them, or of the site itself as it is in construction. So we're really happy with this tool. We're excited. It seems like people are using it, and hopefully it provides a little bit of more information to the community and opportunity to get to know your community a little better. That's all I have for you.
Sounds fantastic. Thank you.
Absolutely.
It's, if you go to the community development page, and I can send you all the link, there's actually a little icon. Hold on, I'll show you. We love show and tell in the communications world. If you actually go in here, and this is the community development page, it's right there. Or we also have a link that's botetourtva.gov/what's going on in Boco. You just click there, and then it takes you right in.
Thank you, Mrs. Bradbury. Mr. McCoy.
Welcome.
Mrs. Pendleton, would you be able to provide an update on the cloud permit software implementation, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Good to be back up here again. This is exciting stuff. Very happy to be sharing that we are on our way. I've kicked off and launched, and I'm going to give lots of credit to Mr. Lewis, who's sitting behind the timer here, for his work helping to move us into a new realm of permitting and providing information to our development community through the use of Cloud Permit. Cloud Permit is a online cloud-based system that it will allow us to be able to communicate directly and in live mode with our development community, with our home builders, with our contractors, our building inspectors, those doing inspections, just about anybody, our engineers, anybody doing anything that would require a permit or an approval to come through the community development office. It is really going to streamline and automate things, automatic statuses, updates to applicants and all involved parties, organizing and filtering things by GIS and functionality that will allow for someone to walk up to check an inspection on a property by simply scanning a QR code on their inspection result. In terms of contractor registrations, streamlining renewals and helping us to understand our contractor databases, providing GIS mapping, it allows for us to not only go through the inspections, the permitting, the plan review, but also enforcement. Being able to understand through spatial data the ability to live in our world and be a little bit quicker and more efficient. Accessing layers like floodplain maps, construction areas, planning optimal routes, lots of configuration options. That's kind of where we are right now, is working through what is the best user-friendly approach to our configuration. And once we do that, then the team is going to be ready to start intaking and testing that permits in that database very, very shortly. Working on integration for online and over-the-counter payments for easy fee collection. And again, the online portal in the cloud means you can use any mobile device, storing that information in the cloud, saving and protecting that real-time information, and sending direct or group timestamp messages. And so we're very excited. I'd like to thank my team. It's a big, heavy lift amidst a lot of big, heavy lifts, a lot of things going on, but we're very excited to be able to have that. That's one thing that we hear the most is people would just like real-time information. And so we're really looking forward to that on our end as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
So we have one more item on our agenda, which is open space. Mr. Lockerbie will handle. But before we move on to that, thank you, Dr. Scott Horn, for the concept, bringing together a joint meeting. To Board of Supervisors, any individual have comments, remarks about the meeting, or about anything for that matter? Comments from supervisors? So, I'll just say that this was a good idea for a number of reasons. One is just to show the connection between the two boards and how closely our duties are and yet how different they are. Because they're on a continuum, but they're sequential the way they should be. So the Planning Commission has looked at the details, assess the details, assess the effects of these or any zoning issues, passed it on to the board with their recommendation. The board looks at it maybe from a broader viewpoint and with different information, but it all comes together and it works well. So appreciate everyone's diligence in making this system work. So, and thank you to the Planning Commission. Good working with you guys.
Thank you, Mr. Clinton. And I would like to take a moment to thank you and the board for the opportunity to interact this evening. It's certainly a nice opportunity to showcase our skill sets and work together. Thank you for that opportunity. Before you resume your business, from the Planning Commission's perspective, I can take a motion to adjourn at this time.
So move.
We have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
A motion and a second to adjourn. Any conversation? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Board of Supervisors now has the issue of considering relocation of open space. And this is County Attorney Lockerbie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we alluded to during the rezoning public hearing a few minutes ago, when the Economic Development Authority acquired the 62.7 acres from the Harrington family, taking an even further step back, all the way around the Greenfield Park, there is a 100-foot conservation buffer. In some places, that's a 200-foot conservation buffer. And that is recorded in the land records as a conservation easement. Well, technically an open space easement, which is a form of conservation easement. When that 62.7 acres was added to the remaining undeveloped portion of Greenfield, which is now tax parcel 8826-3, there was a previously platted strip that went right down the middle along the old edge of the property, which was still technically subject to a conservation easement, which makes developing the property very difficult and also does very little good in terms of actually buffering the people around the property. However, since the county is the easement holder, prior to actually moving forward with drafting the deeds and doing the plat for the easement, what the county actually needs to do is make a finding that substituting the new boundary area for the old easement is actually going to be equal to or greater than the conservation value of the previous easement. We can certainly go through here with and figure out the area. This is certainly going to increase the air. If it were added to be around the new perimeter of Greenfield, it would make the area of the conservation easement larger. It would be, because this is all just valued on the per acre basis, it would increase the value of that area. And it's somewhat subjective, but I believe the Economic Development Authority believes that it would increase the conservation value of having that buffer all the way around, while also making it practical to actually market that broad area to potential developers of that area. Consequently, the Economic Development Authority has directed Mr. McFadden to request you to authorize moving that conservation easement. It will come back to you again with a final deed and plat showing the actual location. But this was the necessary first step for you to authorize that to move forward at all.
More to come.
There is somewhat more to come, but the bottom line is that this is moving that conservation easement in order to put in those buffers about which you heard a lot of questions, and also the first step toward making sure that the covenants that make sure that development in this park is, I mean, people might disagree over how intensive or onerous it is, but certainly keeps it within bounds, are placed onto that property.
Good. Thank you, sir. Unless anyone has additional business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
We need to authorize.
Can you please vote?
I move that we accept that resolution
Second.
for open space.
Thank you. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries and it's accepted. And now I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you for your patience, everyone.